My head's clear now. I don't know how long I was in that haze, but I'm better now. They were trying to make me forget because I knew too much. They thought they could just rip stuff out of my memory, but they have no idea who they're messing with. For a while, it was all about information for me. I had to learn more about the day-to-day, or rather cycle-to-cycle, that goes on in this place. I needed to memorize the layout of floor 3. Cody and Noel knew most of it, but I felt I needed to map it out in my own head just in case. Each cycle went as followed. We woke up in our beds every time. We were called for breakfast, where we served the same slop every time for all 3 meals, but we also get our meds at the same time. After breakfast, we have group therapy, and after a couple of sessions, I figured out what was going on. Every time someone had a strong negative emotion, anger, depression, anxiety, envy, shame, etc. At some point, nurse sadist would call them out and make them act upon it. So there was good news there. They could only hear thoughts derived from those types of emotions. Group was followed by either being the experiment subject of the day or quiet time. Basically, if they weren't inflicting pain on you, you were free to roam the halls. Noel gave himself the task to try and get to know the orderlies better and see if there was anyone we could trust or use. Because of this, Cody and I spent a lot of time together. He and I roamed the halls, mapping the floor plan, scouting possible exit and backup exit points. We also spoke to each other about what we were like before the royal visit, what our lives were like, what our passions were, and what our favorite restaurant was. Walking the halls with Cody made me feel like things were normal, as if we weren't trapped in a hospital, but more like we just started dating. Only we would sometimes hear someone screaming in the background, or Frank would start hassling us to play or talk with him. As more and more cycles passed, I became more and more eager for quiet time with Cody. I was pretty sure the feeling was mutual. Cody would usually wait for me outside the group therapy room and take my hand as I passed the threshold of the doorway. It was weird. I would have never imagined developing feelings for anyone when I awoke in this hospital. But this, I guess you could call it a relationship. Definitely was the realest relationship I have ever been in. We were dead honest with each other. No games, no fear of exposing ourselves. We saw each other at our weakest when we would come to after an experiment. We became so vulnerable with one another, and because of it, I felt safe with him. In a way, Cody was not only giving me hope that we would leave this place, but he was also giving me a reason to be happy in spite of our situation. Lunch would be called after quiet time, and afterwards was recreational time. I decided to accept the delusions found in the common room and played imaginary pool and ping pong with Frank when Frank was there. I discovered something weird about the TV. If you sat in the chair directly in front of it, you would see things. The static would first start to turn into familiar shapes, kind of like when you take mushrooms or when you take too much ecstasy. But once I decided to keep staring, enjoying the trip, and I started to see family members, friends, even coworkers that I wasn't even close to, living their lives. They were driving to work or getting a coffee at Tim's. My dog was in someone else's backyard that I didn't recognize. He seemed happy, running around. It looked like the world was still going on, with no idea what was happening to us. It was disturbing to watch. After rec, we would be told to stay in our rooms until supper. It was suggested to take this time to clean ourselves, as each room had a full bathroom in it. This was the best time for me to write. I would take my shower, but kept the water running after I was done. We wouldn't be bothered for what felt like an hour. I never counted the time, but there were no clocks to be found anywhere. But it was a good assumption. Supper would follow, and we were once again given quiet time. And we would have time with the doctor. During this quiet time, I would never remember going to my room and falling asleep. But at the beginning of every cycle, I would wake up in my room. Even if the last thing I would remember would be walking the halls with Cody. I would wake up in my bed, and waking up wasn't really pleasant. I would always wake up in a panic, hyperventilating because I experienced what the doctor would call sleep paralysis. I had experienced it a few times before in my early 20s. I just never knew it was actually a condition. Basically, I would wake up to my body being completely paralyzed. For a few seconds, that felt like forever. I wouldn't be able to move. My mind would conclude that because I wasn't able to move, I couldn't breathe either. When I would finally regain motor function, I was grasping for air. It happened every time I woke up. It was absolutely terrifying. I spoke about it with Cody and Noel, and they said that they experienced the same thing. We assumed the doctor was somehow inducing this response. I had been experimented every other cycle. Cody was on the same days as me. Noel and Frank were on the opposite days. Sometimes it would be torturous. Other times I wouldn't remember a thing. Believe it or not, I was getting used to it. I knew it would only last for a period of time. I started to see patterns and began seeing how this place ran. There was a total of 4 nurses, 6 orderlies, 1 secretary, and only 1 doctor that was seen. I believed there were more who chose to only observe us, like lab rats. Through the cameras, there were a lot of cameras. Joe doesn't seem to care about his job. He's constantly leaving his post to do God knows what in the bathroom for a good 15 minutes. So if we need to get to the door you guys found, it would need to be at the post in that area. We 3 were playing cards in the commons room. Noel was giving us a rundown of all the orderlies. All the other ones are like soldiers at their post, but I think your backup emergency staircase is better. Cody and I decided which 2 exits were best. Why? They both have the same amount of risk and distance between them and orderly posts. Yeah, but I was taking a look at the cameras and caught something maybe you guys were too busy to notice. Noel gave us a smile. He was right. We were pretty much inseparable the past couple of cycles. Okay, smartass, what did we miss? He asked Noel. Cody lightly punched his shoulder. Noel laughed. Hey, don't hate because I'm smarter than you. Okay, but seriously, now, the cameras in this room have red blinking lights on top of them, right? We both were turning our heads to look, but Noel stopped us. No, not so obviously. Just take a look later, while scoping out one of the orderlies. I noticed that the cameras in the hallway close to the secretary's station wasn't blinking. I started noticing that while the important cameras, like the one in the cafeteria, the one in the group, are all blinking, but in certain hallways and corners, there are no blinking lights. Shit! This is great news! I couldn't help but show my excitement. I hadn't told them this, but I had no idea how we were going to avoid the cameras. Unfortunately, it looked like my excitement caught someone's attention. The sirens went off, and we all hit the floor. I was facing the windows, so I didn't see who was coming to get me. Even though the siren was going off, I could still hear Nurse Cutlot's heel clicking every time she walked. I grinded my teeth as she approached my side. I half expected her to step on my spine, but to my surprise, she continued walking. She stopped in front of Sally. What the hell could Sally have done to deserve an alarming sound off? You think you're funny, don't you, Sally? She spoke concedingly, but there was a slight shake in her voice. What could Sally have done to make her scared? Sally didn't move, her eyes not moving. Not looking up, she looked completely catatonic. Don't play this game with me, Sally. Nurse Maddox was trying to use her hushed voice, but she was so angry to speak quietly. She sighed and signaled the 2 orderlies. I turned my head to see if Cody and Noel knew what the hell was going on. They looked just as confused as I was. I turned my head to the other side to see if any of the other patients seemed to understand. Frank had guilt written all over his face. The 2 orderlies took Sally's arm and dragged her out of the commons room. She didn't make one sound the whole time. Go to your rooms early, Nurse Maddox ordered us. We got up and started making our ways to our room. We all walked in silence, too terrified to get noticed. In the hallway, I walked quietly to catch up with Frank. Hey Frank, what the hell happened back there? It's all my fault, Anna. Sally was just protecting me, but I told her not to. Frank, Sally doesn't talk, not with her mouth. But we were able to hear each other in our heads. You know, how could that be possible, I thought. But then I remembered where I was. Okay. Then what was she protecting you from? Them. She didn't want them in my head anymore. She said they were hurting me, and I didn't deserve it, so she stopped them from getting in. How? No idea. She just did. Frank turned and went down the hall to his room. As I was getting to my door, Cody ran right past me and went inside my room. I looked around. No one saw. I went into my room and shut the door. What are you? The cameras in your hallway aren't blinking. Oh, okay. So Frank knows something. Cody didn't waste any time. He started to kiss me, and I reciprocated. It had been a long time coming, with a lot of build-up tension between us. Once we started, we couldn't stop. It was wonderful. Once again, Cody brought me back to feeling like a normal human again. I guess sex does that. And they tried to take it away. Well, guess again. I remember everything, and no matter how many drugs they shove in my veins, they will not take it away from me. My thoughts and memories will leave my mind. They'll have to kill me first.